Hello again. Back in the garage with a little tool review. Tool review on a power probe soldering kit. It's a butane soldering kit that I got off Amazon. I probably got it 6 months ago, 7 months ago. Before that, I'd always use an electric soldering gun if I ever had to solder anything, or a lot of times car stuff I'd use the little end connectors that have the heat shrink attached to them. You know, crimp them on and heat them up. Didn't really work too well for too long. It worked for a few years, and moisture and corrosion would get in there and they start going bad. So I looked into soldering wires together. It's a lot better, it's a lot cleaner, and it's really not as hard as you'd think. So about the kit, that's what you get in the kit. You get the soldering gun, a little bit of soldering wire, a couple tools, and some different tips. And I've experimented with this tip right here and then the tip that's on there. They work about the same. As far as the kit goes, I have nothing bad to say about it. It does run through butane pretty good, pretty quick, but it also solders pretty quick. And one thing you know about anything that's butane, any kind of lighters, if you fill them up and let them sit, they tend to leak out over time, especially if it gets really hot in your area. It'll suck all the butane out of it. So I don't leave this thing full. I tend to pump some into it, Bernzomatic butane, get the job done. Whatever's left in it gets left in it. But it's a really nice unit. On-off switch, striker. You can hear it's going. There's also a port, an exhaust port. You can usually see something orange glowing in there, so you know it's actually firing. Adjustable flame, so you don't have to burn the house down. Turn it off. As far as soldering goes, I figured out that soldering's a lot easier if you do it the right way. It can be really hard if you do it the wrong way. So I'll show you a couple techniques that I found work really good and keep that from getting a big ball of solder. You have a nice clean wire, put a piece of heat shrink on it afterwards and it's the same size. Other than seeing the heat shrink, you wouldn't even know it was there. Hang on just a minute and I'll get set up, show you a couple tips. Alright, so you got a couple wires here. Obviously not connected to anything, but we'll pretend they are. You want to strip them back almost half an inch, 3/8 to half an inch, pretty far. The thicker the wire, the more you want to strip it back. You want to get good connection on here. One of the two ways that I will connect these two wires before I solder is by overlapping them and twisting them together. Twist them really tight so they don't want to come apart. See how they're twisted together right there? That's already making a really solid connection. After you add solder in there, it's going to fill it in. One more thing, before you twist these together, you want to slide the shrink wrap over it, one side or the other, because otherwise you have no way of covering these things unless you use electrical tape. And electrical tape, it'll work, but it's not as good as shrink wrap. So don't forget your shrink wrap first. But for this, we'll slide it on the end. That's the main way I use to connect wires. Another way I've used, if you don't feel like using that twist method, is to take the wires and kind of feed them together. Try and get them really mixed in there. and then twist them. And that'll get them really locked in there. It does about the same, but it's a little bit harder to do. So I like the first way better, but this way does work pretty good too. Now I got some clamps over here, vice grips actually, that we'll use to hold these up, because I don't have enough hands to be able to hold these up and solder them. So to solder this real quick and easy, get some butane, put in the end here. I only try and put as much butane in as I'm going to use, because it will eventually leak out. Turn it on full, fire it up. Yep, looks like it's going. You have an exhaust port right here. You can use that to kind of heat the wires up a little if you want. You don't have to. The way I found works the best is to wait until the tip's hot enough to melt the solder. Usually takes 30 seconds or so. I guess we'll see in the video exactly how long it takes. A little solder on there. Try and melt that solder. Onto the wire, and then stick your heat up underneath the wire. And as you connect it, the solder wants to melt within itself. Kind of feed a little more solder in there, and just suck it right into the wire. Just like that. Done. Take the heat away. Let it cool down for a second. It's not coming apart. We'll pretend I slid this on beforehand. You want to let this cool down all the way. It's heat shrink. It shrinks up when it heats up. So if you slide it over there when it's hot, you'll get about halfway over, and it'll start shrinking down on that. And it won't go anymore. So that's already cool. Take this, slide it over there. Take your power probe, fire it up. This is where that little exhaust port comes in real handy. Take that and run it over your heat shrink. The heat coming out of that port heats up your shrink wrap. Shrink it down nice and tight so you can almost see all the work that you've just done. It's nice and tight around that wires. You know the moisture's not going to get in there. It's not going to start corroding. Now if you don't think this is thick enough, I've never had a problem with it, but if you don't think it's thick enough, wrap some electrical tape around that and you'll be fine. One more shot at soldering with the other way of twisting wires up. And it takes a while for this tip to cool all the way down, so you want to be careful not to touch it. If you can get your solder to touch that stuff you put on the top, it'll start melting together real quick. See how that just sucks right in there? And you can add solder wherever you see solder, you can add it because it'll melt. Done. Just like that. So that's a little review on the power probe. Show you how to use it. I got it off Amazon. I think it was about $45. It did not come with butane, so I bought the butane off Amazon also. I want to say that was 15 bucks for a can of butane that lasts quite a while. Still got a bunch in it. I use this soldering gun for work. I use it a lot. I've gotten really comfortable with it, and to tell you the honest truth, this soldering gun actually made soldering easy for me. I never used to solder too much before it, and when I did, it was kind of a pain in the butt, especially if you've got an electric soldering iron that you have to wait a while for it to heat up. This thing heats up pretty quick. The bigger wires, I mean, this is 16 gauge. 16 gauge wire, that's about the thickest wire you're going to solder in a car. You're not going to want to solder the battery cables, so 16 gauge is it might get a little bit bigger, but not much. Anything automotive, I'd use it, definitely. It's a great little tool, and it's not really expensive. So I'll leave some links in the description on the power probe, link to Amazon. Like I said before in other videos, we are Amazon affiliates. If you want to get one, use the link. It doesn't cost you anything. It doesn't add any kind of charge to your purchase, but it does get us a little kickback in a way, if you want to call it that. I don't know if you're supposed to call it that. But anyways, guys, have fun. If you haven't hit that like button, hit the like button. Hit the subscribe button. Help our channel get out there so more people can see some of the reviews that I put out there and some of the things I make. Until next time, go make something.